All right, so where we're gonna start today is at the original radio here. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull this radio out, then I'm gonna get into running our cargo camera third brake light kit, and I'm gonna get those wires up here. So from there, we can test out the cargo camera on all three of the radio options that we offer for this vehicle. But to remove this radio, where you're gonna start is right up top. You have this little tray cover, and once you pull that up, that'll expose two T20 torque screws that are going straight down on the top. We'll pull those out. Basically, once you have those screws out, there's nothing else holding the radio in except for some retaining clips. So from here, we can just yank it out. Just like that. Now on the back side, the first plug that you're gonna need to unplug is gonna be your cigarette lighter plug or your power port. And then we'll move on to the yellow FACRA connection right up top here. Then we got a white one right next to it. Some of these are pretty tight, so it might help to have a little tiny flathead on you to help pull these out. Then we can pull our radio harness out. This is a lever locking type of harness. So once you release the lever, the little push button on the side, it'll push itself out of there. And we have our USB adapter, and finally at the bottom, our reverse camera. All right, then we can pull the last remaining plugs from our bezel, and we'll be in good shape here. All right, so what you're gonna wanna grab to get started up here is a Phillips screwdriver or a Phillips tipped drill. You have two Phillips screws holding on your third brake light that we'll need to pull out. When you're pulling these out, be careful not to drop it in between your bed and the cab of your truck, or you may never get it back. But once you have those screws out, you may need a panel tool or a pry tool. You can use your fingernails. This seal has a tendency to get pretty stuck on here, depending if it's never been removed before. But once you pop your taillight out, disconnect the single connector on the back side of it. From here, you're not gonna plug in your brake light just yet. We have to run our custom harness that's included with the kit. So what I'll do to make my life a little easier is I'll grab the side that plugs in behind the radio and a long zip tie that I cut the end off of, and I actually just made little points on the end of the zip tie here. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tape this on to the end of the harness to help me run this through our headliner. And at the end, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna leave a little flag on there, and this will just help me to unravel this whole thing once I get it to where I need it to go. But from here, in your taillight hole, you can actually see your headliner right here. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna feed this off to the side. I'm gonna run this down the driver's side of the headliner. So I'll just feed that in there a little bit. And now I'm gonna move over to the driver's side headliner, the weather stripping. I'm gonna pull that down. Hopefully have access to the zip tie pretty easy in there, and then pull it out and through. So let's move on to the side of the truck. All right, so on the side of the truck here, I'm at the driver's side rear door. Weather stripping up here, I'm just gonna yank down. And I'm gonna reach my hand in here and see if I can't feel that zip tie if I kind of aimed it in the right direction. And it's actually right there. And now all we have to do is simply pull it through. And what you want to do is you want to keep an eye on the back side of that wire and make sure that you're not going to actually pull that too far through, and then you're going to lose it inside of your headliner. So just about there, I'll leave a little bit of length on there. And now we simply can tuck this in the headliner all the way to the front until we make it to the radio cavity. All right, now when you get to this area here, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab my panel tool. I'm actually gonna pop the side cover off of the dash, just so I can take this wire that I ran and kind of tuck it through there it'll drop down by the dash, and then we can work it back up to the radio cavity. All right, now while it's in here, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna throw a couple zip ties on here, and then we can go ahead and put that panel back on. All right, from here, I'm gonna grab that same zip tie. I'm gonna try and fish it up into the dash, just like that. Now I'll pull all the slack through. All right, and with the excess, I'm just gonna coil up whatever I didn't need or didn't use, and I'll throw a zip tie on there just so it's nice and organized in our dash. All right, now we can pull the tape, and we're ready to jump back in our bed and reinstall that new third brake light with the cargo camera. All right, now we're ready to reinstall the new brake light. Simply plug in your OEM connection, and this is our camera feed that we just ran. That'll plug into the camera right there. And now we can simply snap this into place and screw it in. And you're gonna use your OEM screws that you pulled out earlier, so hopefully you didn't lose those. All right, we're all set up here. Let's jump back in the truck. All right, so from here, what we're ready to do is plug in all of the included harnesses that came with our kit. We have our radio harness here, and this actually has our camera connector on it as well. So we can go ahead and plug this in. And basically the reverse of how we pulled it out, with that lever in the upwards position, you'll kind of stick it together, and this will start to slide down. You press it down all the way, and that'll lock it into place. If you can pull this apart, it didn't make a good connection. So you may have to do that a couple times, where you kind of line it up. As you push it, that lever will start to move. Then you can push it the rest of the way, and that's a secure connection. But with that plugged in, we can get our camera connector that we ran from our cargo camera. We'll plug that in. We have our power port adapter that's going to give that camera power. We can plug that in as well. And that blue line on the camera is actually not used for this application, so you don't even have to worry about that. But that's it for the connectors, or all the connections. Now we can grab our radio, and we'll get everything plugged in. All right, with all of our plugs connected securely behind the radio, we can go ahead and pop our radio back into place. All right, now that we got our UBD installed, as well as the cargo camera, we're ready to install and run our Genie programmer. So to do that, we actually need to access the security gateway module, which is behind the dash cluster. So I'm gonna show you how to get back there and plug that in. All right, in order to remove your cluster, you're gonna wanna grab a little panel tool, and you're gonna wanna pop it in between the cluster and your dash, the cluster bezel, and pop down on the top side. And once you have those 3 clips popped down, you can pull towards the rear. and that'll pop the rest of this piece right out of there. Now on the left side of your steering wheel, you have a small panel that will pop out on the bottom side with 2 clips, and the top is actually slid in to the dash. So you'll just pop out on the bottom and then the top will just slide right out of there. Now for the driver's side, the radio actually covers the push button start switch here. This panel needs to be pulled back to access the 7mm that's behind this little vinyl or fabric cover for your steering wheel shroud. So what we'll do is we'll just pop it out. There we go. Just a little bit, and you can see we have access to our 7mm screw right back there, and we have one on the other side. All we have to do is pull those 2 out, and it actually helps if you have an angle driver or something small, just because getting behind the steering wheel can be kind of a headache if you're using power tools. If you're using hand tools, you should have a lot more access. And once you have those 2 screws out of this little cover, you can pop that off into the rear, and that doesn't need to be removed completely either. You're just trying to pull this down so you can access the 2 7mm screws that are holding in the bottom of the cluster. And the same like before, having an angle driver will actually help a lot in this situation. And then right up on top, it's going to be kind of hard to see, but you have 2 more 7mm kind of going in at an angle. All right, now with all 4 7mm removed, we're ready to pull our cluster out of there. And there's actually 1 connection on the back side. You can pop that out. We'll set this aside for now. And now we have access to our security gateway module, which is straight behind the cluster. All right, so way back behind your cluster area, there's the security gateway module. There's 2 plugs plugged in there, and they're actually going in on the side, just like this, in the same orientation. So we send you this bypass that you got to plug in. So all you're going to do is remove those 2 plugs, plug it into here, and that'll allow us to program the vehicle for the upgrades that we're just installing. So I'll go ahead and pull those out, just like that. And now I can plug in the 2 plugs, and they only go in one way to our bypass module. All right, now we're ready to run the Genie Programmer. All right, so before we run our Genie Programmer, I'm going to turn the ignition to the run position. We can grab our Genie, plug the Genie in, and all we have to do is wait for the green light and the horn honk, and then we'll pull our Genie out. The vehicle's been programmed. All right, we got our green light telling us the vehicle's been programmed, and we can shut the ignition back off. Now, you're going to want to do is let the vehicle sleep, maybe give it 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Some may need it a little bit longer for the programming to actually take effect in the vehicle.